Welcome to Collision, the podcast where we discuss the fun and sometimes complicated collision of real life and trusting God. If you're curious or confused about how to engage the world we live in, we hope our conversation here helps. Now, let's get into this episode of Collision.
Well, welcome to the Collision Podcast. You see two new faces here today. Pastor Matt and Pastor James are taking a break and have invited us here. My name is Angie. I'm the CEO here at Crossroads. Strange title for a church, but essentially what that means is I get to lead our ministries and lead our staff. It's kind of a cool gig. And I'm joined today by my friend Caroline, who is our communications director. So all the things you see digitally, they're her responsibility. She does all that really cool stuff. And we're just really glad to be here today.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah,
it's going to be so fun. Well, we'll see. We're a little nervous.
Yeah, you can tell, probably.
I know. But we'll just laugh a lot, share some fun stories. It'll be a good half hour. Mm-hmm. So before we get into our actual topic, you just got home.
I did.
Like 24 hours ago.
Yes.
Tell us about your amazing adventure.
It was
Where'd
amazing
you go?
because you're at sea level, so I didn't get burnt. It was amazing.
That's
it was so
awesome.
weird because I don't wear sunscreen when I'm 23.
So you went to...
I went to Greece. Yes.
That's so amazing.
So we went to a couple of the islands, and man, it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't love swimming in things that you can't see the bottom.
Yeah,
And so you could see all the way, and there were
So
no
beautiful.
like weird fish. So that was one of my favorite parts in kayaking. Cool. So it was just beautiful, and it was kind of like our late honeymoon.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
So you did a little bit. You did all of Greece, right? Like you did the seaside. You did the White Cliffs. You did the islands, and then you did like the historic stuff too.
A little bit. We didn't do like Paul's Journey or anything. We did like the Acropolis.
Oh, yeah.
Or Parthenon.
Yeah.
I'm still confused on which one. But yeah, so Athens and then a couple of the islands. And
That's so cool.
They're just so cool. The Greek people are so nice too.
Yeah.
They really welcome like tourists.
They're incredible.
Yeah.
And their food. Tell me what your favorite thing that you ate was.
I don't know. They have this, you probably know the like phyllo dough with like custard inside.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. The dessert version?
Yes.
So good.
Of course, it's dessert for me.
Amazing.
But, yeah. So
oh, goodness.
You've been to Greece, right?
Yes, I love it.
That.
Well, I'm just so glad. I was seeing all of Caroline's pictures as she was posting, and I was like just a little jealous, to be honest. It looked so much fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
I love Greece.
Yeah.
I love the people. I love the food. I'm Italian, so my whole family's from Italy. And I don't know, I just feel like some affinity to the Greek, to the Greeks. I don't... Oh, my phone is telling me something. Or my watch is telling me something. I totally have an affinity for the Greek culture because I think it's so much like my Italian culture. They just have such incredible places and people and food.
And the
so
culture
fun.
around food is so beautiful. Like,
I love it.
Just to sit with each other and share. Oh, it's so fun.
So cool.
Fun. Yeah.
I didn't get to go with Nick, so I'm glad that you went with Keegan. And I was thinking, as we were like looking at your pictures, I was thinking, we celebrate 25 years, like in 2 years or something. So I thought, well, that gives me enough time. I can schedule a Greek vacation,
Totally should.
right?
Yes.
So you've inspired me. I think we're going to do
Let's
it.
do it.
I think
and
we
call
do.
it your honeymoon, just like Pastor
We
Brad.
totally could. Oh gosh, we're so going to live like Pastor Brad. He goes on like a lot of honeymoons.
Yeah.
And I sort of love that culture. So we got to get started. We haven't had a honeymoon in 25 years. So it's time to do another
You
one.
haven't called it yet.
I know, right?
Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, I think actually travel is such a good segue into what we're going to be talking about today. So when Caroline and I were processing through what we should talk about, she and I have been geeking out over this really cool podcast. It's called Bema. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's definitely worth a check. They are, I think, like an 9-year rhythm at this
like
point.
2017 or something.
Yeah, so we're in year one. Like we're noobs to this whole thing. But what's really cool is they're going through the Bible in a very slow process. And what they're really doing, this is a pastor who's processing. He's a pastor on the West Coast, and he has spent a ton of time with rabbis. And so what he's really processing is looking at the Bible and how it would have been revealed to the early Jews. And so there's so many cool insights that we're seeing. And we're like, 15, 16 weeks into this podcast, and we're still in Genesis. So it's a very slow process. But one of the overarching themes that we've been just really resonating with is this idea of rest, that God actually didn't create us to be feverish workhorses. He created us on purpose to rest. He actually gives us a direction to rest. It's a directive. It's a command. On the seventh day, you will rest. And so we as a culture so readily kind of ignore that directive and also ignore the gift. And so we've been just talking with some other staff and coworkers about what that means and just how our lives could look a little different. And so we thought today might be kind of fun to process through what rest looks like for our own lives and maybe inspire you guys to think about it for yourselves as well. And so as we get started, I think the first question is from like a big picture standpoint, what does rest mean to you? How did your heart get convicted to start pursuing rest with God?
Yeah,
what does that look like?
Well, so it's a recent endeavor, especially from the podcast, but even a little bit before. I went to a Christian college, CCU in Lakewood, and they have Fridays off, but I always took that day to study, and it was kind of the culture to just like study all day, even though it was Christian. And that was kind of like, they told us that was our Sabbath. And so when I came on staff and we were like, really don't work on Fridays at all, I was like, what do you mean? I have to study. I have to do something. I have to be productive. So it was definitely a struggle for a while. But then on top of getting married and graduating and starting a new full-time job, I realized that like the pressure and the load, you're going to run out. Your body's going to burn out either one way or the other. So I would get sick too, like, and just be like depleted and done, or not be my full self for like responsibilities that I like really valued and cared about, but too much was on my plate. And it was just so easy. I don't even have kids, and it was so easy to book every minute of the day.
Yeah.
And so I really just realized, okay, something's not working. And it almost became like a god of my own, like an idol that I was worshiping to book everything all the time.
Yes.
That was kind of the start of it, of like, this can't continue, and me to be healthy and connected to God. It was like a disconnect. So what about?
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
I so resonate with everything you're saying, especially when you say like it's an idol of its own. I mean, that's really strong. That's strong language. And I think it's real and right. Yeah. For me, it feels the same way. Like, I have so many good things in my life that so easily become like an idol to me, that distract me from what I'm supposed to be doing, or not even supposed to be doing, but like the fullness I'll experience if I'm abiding and resting in the Lord. Totally. And so I so resonate with you, Caroline. Yeah, my testimony is really a testimony of God's faithfulness and his call to rest. I found myself really early in life. I didn't learn this as early as you did. By the time I was 30, I was a senior executive for a large production company in a pretty large industry. So like a $6 billion industry. And in that industry, I was the youngest person in that position, and I was one of only 3 women. And so to get there, obviously you can imagine like the drive. It was totally. Exactly what you're saying. It was a push for more. I was constantly seeking more money, more accolade, higher title, like just push, And I found myself right about 31, 32, like you wouldn't have recognized that person, I found myself in a space where I had 2 young children who kind of, to be fair, didn't really know me. They were being raised by a nanny. I had a marriage that was struggling, and I was gone 3 or 4 weeks. I was traveling all over the world, going to Greece, doing really cool things, but completely on my own. And I don't know, just for a different purpose, I suppose. And God is so good. Like he met me in that space, and he just revealed himself so fully to me. He reminded me who he was. He reminded me of the gift and his call, and that he actually wanted more for me. And so Nick and I, because of God's interference, Nick and I began a journey in our early 30s that we decided that I was going to quit. And so it was scary, you guys. We got rid of 3/4 of our income. Wow. It felt like we were diving into like just a pit of unknown. Yeah. And just fully trusting in God's provision. And of course, spoiler alert, he totally provided. God was there the entirety, like in the hards and in the goods. He was so there. And what he taught me specifically was just the importance of rest and how I wasn't created to be an overproducer, and I'm a chronic overproducer. And so just his gentleness and like just wanting to be with me and revealing himself in that way, like rest in me, abide in me, just take a breath, Ange, and oh my goodness, has he transformed our life,
Totally.
So
cool.
It's amazing. Rest is like, it is paramount for us. We went on a crazy journey because we were like, okay, we're going to quit my job. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm going to figure that thing out. I'm going to try not to be an overproducer in that space, which is, like a chronic problem for me.
So hard.
Yeah, building Sabbath rest as a family. Anyways, it's a
whole new identity that you have to put on constantly, like because you are so competent at what you do, but that's not your identity.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so hard.
Well, and that's so interesting because you and I both have similar like pushes towards rest in that we were overproducing and almost feeling like the necessity to do that.
Yeah.
So like, what do you think it is about our culture that really strives towards more and almost like really easily rejects God's gift of rest? Like, what do you think that is?
Well, I guess growing up in American culture, and that's kind of what I'm speaking to, is like just the idea of you need to buy more. So like kind of that cycle of like you're working more so that you can spend more so that you don't really have time to enjoy the things that you bought. And it's just a kind of a grind, a hamster wheel. So it's kind of that consumerist culture. And I don't know, have you like, I would always feel like if I didn't do this list, like laundry list of things, then what was the point in the day? Like kind of that, like that is my worth. That is, that's the reason why I was created, is to create. And that's just not true. Like we are created in God's image to enjoy and be with him. And gosh, culture, it's ripping you away from that relationship with him. And so I think that's a huge push in culture today. Yeah,
no, I think that's so fair. And I love what you said earlier about how your value becomes in your production. Yeah. Because I think that's such an easy trap to get into. Especially, I don't know because we're not men, but I know that that's really strong for women, where it's like you are valued by how much you can produce, by how great of a wife you are, how great of a mom you are, how well your children are succeeding. Like, it's just this heavy burden where really we become chronic overproducers, and that's actually how we value ourselves. Instead of valuing ourselves as image bearers of God. And what would that look like if that shifted, you know? How would we look differently if we were just reflecting who he is in us? It takes a lot of intentional rest, I think, There was a moment a couple of years ago when I was on a retreat, and the prompt was to go out and spend an hour and just like notice God. Caroline and I are doing a lot of work with something called Capable Life. And so a lot of Capable Life is noticing what's around you. And so that was the prompt. It was like, notice where God is.
Hard.
It's so hard.
It's so hard.
And then I found myself like starting this journey, like overproducing, right? So I'm like,
oh my gosh, totally.
Because I wanted to have I wanted to come back with this like crazy big God experience, So I'm like noticing a hummingbird drinking nectar, and I'm like, God is creator. And I'm like producing this like, experience, and like I'm not actually experiencing God, and I'm like spinning and like producing.
Okay, there's 5 things that I saw on this walk.
I know, check,
so
and it was ridiculous. So I'm like in the shroud of trees, and it was in the spring, so it was a little chilly, and so it's like in the shade, and so I'm like producing, and almost like literally wearing myself out, And so I come up this embankment, and we're in this like parked area. And I come to this space where it's like kind of barren. It's in the spring, so it's like still brown. I'm like standing by a park bench and like a trash can with like gum all over it, and it's like graffiti everywhere, and it's like not traditionally beautiful, And I'm like spinning, and where I'm going to find God in this, and I'm finding God even in the graffiti artist. He made that part. Like I'm spinning, and I just like come out of the shade into the sun, and I just feel the warmth of the sun on my face, and I just pause, and I like put my face to the sun, and I just feel the presence, the warmth of the sun, right? Just like almost like hugging me, like a mom would do to a spinning child. And I spent like 45 minutes standing in the sun, just feeling the warmth of God, his presence, like calm down, woman, like chill out, stop overproducing me. Just be still, be present with me, rest. I came back all aglow. It was because of the sunburn I got for the 45 minutes in the spring Colorado sun.
Worth it?
I know, but I felt a little bit like Moses coming away from the burning bush, all like glowy and burnt.
Look, guys.
I experienced God. It was so good.
It's amazing.
It's been amazing. So since then, I'm like, chill out, Ange. Like, just be still and just experience him. Notice where he is. Don't try to overproduce your rest.
Totally.
So, anyways.
Beautiful. I have a similar, when we were on the retreat this past year, it's kind of the whole theme was like, it was definitely rest, but it was like city versus wilderness, kind of like which one are you going to choose? Yeah. And like it was kind of up in the Mother Cabrini like shrine.
Yes, love it.
And so basically like you can see the city and you can actually hear the cars because the road is right there. But then there's like a bunch of trees and it's like foresty up on the mountain. And so you could hear like both the trees and the cars. And that was kind of God's moment of me of like, you're always going to live in both. Like you're going to be able to hear the wind blowing through the trees, but you're also going to hear the cars.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Your whole life. And it's a constant choosing. And which one are you going to live in? And it's so hard because, you think that you might be living in one, but you're really living in the other. And it's a different kind of, it's always going to be a balance. But when you can have those little moments of peace and rest, you get like addicted to it. You're like, wait, no, that's what I want.
Yes.
And you can hear God's whisper kind of calling you back into it. And I think that's kind of our hope, is that you hear the whisper throughout this as we continue with rest and this rhythm. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think of that verse, that is like, we're to be in the world, not of the world. As you're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally it. Like we are going to be distracted.
Yeah, totally.
There's going to be loud noises and things that or even good things that will distract us. We have to be kind of vigilant and pursuing rest with God because it is addictive. It's like when you feel it, when you are replenished, not by distraction or sitting on a beach somewhere, which is a great way to replenish, for real. But when you're replenished by His Spirit and that comfort and peace He promises, it's like nothing you've experienced and you want more of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah.
And I think it kind of helps, like, you notice your, like, daily rhythms of, like, kind of just, like, taking a step back. That was kind of our first step in, like, the simplicity was to notice and kind of name, like, what is it, what's your schedule, like, each week, each day, and then what are you going to for comfort, kind of, like, almost trying to replace that rest feeling with God. And then really to just not be super critical of it, but that's definitely like our first step is like, what are we looking for even in our work or even in our rest? Like, are we just mindlessly being entertained?
Yeah.
Are we looking for work for like our value, our worth? Kind of that dichotomy too is
so good.
Yeah.
Caroline is sharing, we're doing, Pastor James is leading the staff through this really fun thing. We're kind of the beta test for some new discipleship stuff. We call them pods. And so we meet every month and we just practice together different rhythms to just ultimately draw us closer in relationship to God. And the first rhythm we practiced was something called simplicity. And it's really the idea that, your life is full. Your life is full of things, and there's intentional things that it's full of, and there's also unintentional things that it's full of. And some of them may be bad, some of them may be great. But what's happening in your life, to stop and notice what is filling your life? And are those things filling you, drawing you closer to the Lord, or are they things that are distracting you from God? And so the first practice we do is you basically take an inventory. You take an inventory of, like Caroline was saying, what do you do the first thing when you wake up? Like, is the first thing you're doing looking at your phone, checking your status, checking your Slack messages and your emails? I mean, that's not altogether terrible, but it's also maybe not the greatest way to start your day in refreshment.
Totally. Yeah. Especially when it's like mindless, like you're just going to it. Like, there's a huge difference between like being intentional about how you structure your day versus, oh my gosh, I just fall into this so easily. Like just to be like, oh, I need to, it's kind of like feeling where your need is of like, I need to feel validated by the work I produce. So I'm going to check my emails first thing. I mean, it's such an easy thing that I think most of us struggle with a lot of the time. Yeah. So putting boundaries in place have been really helpful for a lot of us. So good. Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit in a minute about like our actual rhythms, because I do think the how is kind of, that's the thing. That's the bread and butter of this whole thing. But I think that what you're saying is so important, because I have a really intentional rhythm of what I do, and it's something that I have to vigilantly fight for every day. Like even today, this morning, I have a very specific rhythm where I wake up and I do something specific not to be on technology, and I'm just trying to be present with the Lord. And even today, I was like, not possible, because I'm like spinning over what we're going to talk about today. You know, I'm just like producing, and even recognizing kind of the irony of like trying to practice rest and failing at it because I'm like producing this podcast. And so, it's just the noticing of it, having self-awareness, is really important. I think is really beautiful too, is that you can't do this alone either. Like we're going through this, and rest is a constant thing that we're always going to be practicing. And, to know that you're going to fail, but to have other people that are also like, no, we're trying to rest too. And let's go back to that.
Yes.
It's just a really beautiful thing because, there's a way out. It's, you don't have to live in this space, even though we get in these spaces all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if I ever have to go up on stage, I cannot function.
I know.
Like the whole day before.
Yeah,
like,
we're just spinning. We got to rest a different day. Monday's our Sabbath that day.
Yeah.
We are pretty vigilant around here. Pastor Matt, rest, Sabbath is a huge, huge cultural value for him, or scriptural, spiritual value. And so, it's been something, as Caroline said earlier, we've just really been pushing into. But having that shared language and the shared expectation, like we don't schedule things on Friday together because we are intentionally trying to honor each other. We don't even send like Slack messages or texts or emails involving business because we really want to honor each other.
Totally.
We don't want to distract by that tiny little, because sometimes you can see it and you don't have to respond to it, but it's still happening.
You're thinking about it.
You're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So having that shared value, I think, is really important.
Totally.
I think that's a really good point.
Totally, yeah.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about the how,
Sure. Yeah.
It's just, we want to give a disclosure here, or disclaimer, because I think we both have really intentional methods of resting. And at the same time, they're really hard. Like you may be a person who is like super chill and rest comes really easy. I am not that person.
We're jealous too.
Yeah, we are jealous of that. We are over functioners and we are high production over functioners. And so it probably is going to be a rhythm we practice and remind ourselves all the time. And we fail a lot and we just kind of come back to it, like reminding ourselves of the heart space and the value of what we get when we actually are replenished by the Lord. That's what keeps us going, but don't listen to what we're saying and think we've arrived, because this is a work in progress, like a lot. So what are some of yours?
Yeah. So I also want to give a disclaimer that like I'm definitely in a different season of life than maybe many of you. So I do have a little more extra time, but I feel like it's even more important to structure it too, because I can really waste hours. Like they're scrolling on my phone or just watching TV or anything. So basically, my rhythms right now, I really try to, mainly the most important one for me is like resting on a day of the week. So for me, it depends on like different events, but usually I'll do Friday or Saturday, either one of those. That's my true Sabbath. And I like try not to do anything that I don't want to do. So basically like I ask myself, like, what do I want to do with God today that's going to fill me up, make me feel connected to him. And so sometimes that's hanging out with friends, but then other times it's really just spending the day like alone or with Keegan for a little bit. And it could be like riding my bike, just doing things that really fill me up. It might be sitting down and reading the Bible, or it could be just walking and realizing like where he is and noticing him. So it's just a space that I feel like I'm going to be filled up, and it's almost, it feels a little bit selfish, but it's just like I don't like excuse me, for a weird example, I don't like shave my legs on that day because I think it's
work.
It's a task. Yeah, it's work.
That's so good.
It's ridiculous. So if I want to cook, then sure, but if I don't, then I'm not cooking. It's so funny. And like no chores and stuff like that, which is really hard because like you feel like, oh, I could get ahead on stuff for like the week. So yeah, that's definitely one of my practices. And then throughout the week, I really try to like work out like 3 or 4 days a week. I try to be able to see Keegan, like have dinner with him 3 to 4 times a week, like intentionally. And then I don't check like my work phones like after like 7 or 8. So kind of stuff like that. And then we have been doing like these annual retreats. And so I do one of those a year that Crossroads offers. And that's so nice. A beautiful time it's a whole day. And they kind of guide you through a devotional throughout the day. And then you kind of have another Sabbath, basically, of like if you want to walk around the property or kind of dive in and or even take a nap. I did that for like basically the whole day. Nice. Color.
Those are lovely naps.
Yes. Yeah. So those are a couple of the things that I try to do, but we were also talking that it can be kind of stressful to like, if I'm going to miss it, or what if I really don't want to do it? And so it's trying to be structured around that to some degree, but like things come up. Like if on a Sabbath day, like there's a family emergency or something, like you're going to respond, or even like a work emergency, like you kind of need to. So there's different things, and to try, again, not to be so hard on ourselves to overproduce and be so strict on, like, I'm going to do this. Yeah.
And tomorrow's a new day.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You can always try again.
Absolutely.
Like next week for the Sabbath, but then tomorrow for your daily rhythms of, relaxing.
I love that. I love it. So it sounds to me like you've just created some really beautiful boundaries, you know, and just like benchmarks of things that you're not going to go around. I think you shared, there's a book that we both love called The Ruthless
Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
I never get that out right.
I know. It's hard. By John Mark Comer. He's a great author. It's a very easy read. Like he's very conversational. Yeah. And it's just beautiful. He really dives into like minimalism, but then kind of the simplicity stuff we're working through in the pods too. And some of his stuff is like radical, even more than I would want to do.
Yeah.
But
he pushes the envelope a little.
Yeah, but it does make you think. Like by pushing the envelope, like, okay, what can I realistically kind of take out of my life in order to actually experience more life, more of God? And it's beautiful.
I love it because like it walks through, elimination of things, and then also setting up proper boundaries to not like refill the space, because you know, like you end up living to your fishbowl.
Totally. Yeah,
so if you make your fishbowl smaller, what does it look like to not keep pushing the boundary out? You know, so it sounds like you've really embraced a lot of those into your own rhythms. That's really cool. I love that. That's awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah. What are some of yours?
So this has been like a 10-year journey. So, and it really is foundational in our lives. And I really think my life is actually a testimony to God's work through rest. And so, and honestly, I fail at it generally more often than I succeed probably. But staying with the rhythms, being intentional about seeking God, being in a space that I am just abiding with Him, I really think is... I live in a sitcom. We talk about this a lot. Like I have a crazy life, and you know, leading a church through COVID, and a lot of you know the story of my husband on a ventilator for months and months on COVID, and we've had some recent really hard family deaths, and like just our life is a bit chaotic and crazy, and I think the stability and the stamina that I'm able to live through and with and lead from is because I am being replenished by God. And that's kind of a beautiful testimony, because I'm not perfect. I'm like anything but perfect. I mess this up all the time, but I'm constantly in pursuit of resting in God. And so I think just in that faithfulness, God is abundantly faithful in return. And so as I'll share, it probably will feel a little bit overwhelming, but like really just our experiences, you just take it little by little. And so I have a daily, a weekly, a monthly, and an annual rhythm. And like I said, sometimes we hit them, sometimes we don't. My daily rhythm is, we call it a rule of life. And so we work on some boundaries that we want to set and being really intentional about how we spend our time. I'm kind of a queen of distractions. So when I get anxious or I haven't worked through a problem, I use distraction as a way to like calm. But distraction can bleed into like mindless scrolling, hours and hours, or I'm a voracious reader. And so I can find myself spending hours with a book and like completely ignoring my family. So good things can oftentimes become like, you know, detriments. And so we put together these rules of life, like what are the rhythms you're going to live by? And so my daily life is the first hour, I don't look at my phone. I don't use technology. I try really just to be present. So I water my garden. I sit in my hammock in the backyard. I let the sun hit my face. I actually have removed, I walked a little bit back from doing like Bible study, although it's so valuable and important. And I find times in the day to do Bible study otherwise. Because I'm such an overproducer, I found that to be very like productive and not actually like withing. And so I really spend that first hour just kind of waking up, embracing the day, trying to notice God, not in a productive way, but in a presence sort of way. And like I said, you know, it doesn't always work. This morning is a case in point. I didn't do that. I'm like sitting in my hammock, like desperately trying to just be present with God and not able to as I'm processing through this. So it doesn't always work. But that's sort of a major daily thing that I do. Just try to start my day as close to Him as I can. And then weekly we Sabbath. Sabbath has become just like a paramount like benchmark of our life. It became so important to Nick and I that we actually instituted it into our family. And so Friday's our Sabbath. For me, it looks like a lot of times being outside. Sometimes it's like skiing with my son on a Friday, you know, or in the spring and summer, like going on a hike or just walking around in my neighborhood with my dogs and just experiencing outside. I know we share that. Pickleball.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh.
We're like loving pickleball.
Sometimes I can be too competitive, but
That's
yes,
true.
I
That's
love
true.
pickleball.
That's true. So just things. I like to be active and I like to just be, I don't know, in his creation. So that happens a lot. And then on Saturdays, about 10 years ago, we started Sabbathing with the family. So for those of you who have young kids, it's totally possible, you guys, because we started small. We started Saturday mornings. Nick and I thought about the things that our family really valued. We love to eat. He's Mexican, I'm Italian, like you can't get away from it. We love to eat.
Love it.
Right? And so Saturday looked like this. It was like sleep in as long as you need to. I'm an early riser, but the rest of my people will sleep till noon if they are let. And so Saturday's like, we actually practice rest by sleeping, by resting. We rest as long as we can. About 10:30, we wake up and we have a family meal. Together, we make a brunch and we just share the joy of food. We sit around the table and we eat our breakfast. We pray together. We share in those moments like what's going on in our lives, how we can be supporting and praying for each other. And that's how it started, literally just that. Sleep in, wake up, have brunch, spend some time praying together as a family and praying for each other as a family. And then as the kids grew and as the desire for that togetherness grew, the day grew. And so by the time my son's in college now, but before he left for college, our entire Saturdays, unless something crazy came up, were blocked for Sabbath. And so we would do the same thing, sleep in, wake up, have breakfast, enjoy time together, process through life, pray for each other. And then we would go do something fun as a family, whether it be a hike or fishing or sometimes just hanging out playing video games, like whatever it was, just being together. Resting, focused on who God made us to be. And it took a long time, but it became a rhythm that like when my son comes home from college now, sometimes he'll just show up on a Saturday because he misses that rest space with us. So it like little by little, like our story is just take a little bit at a time and then just kind of build on it. And it's like a muscle, you're growing a muscle. And now to be fair, we don't Sabbath every Saturday together. You know, for those of you who have teenagers, you know how unrealistic that is, but we do it as often as we can. And then I have monthly rhythms. Actually, this is something Pastor Matt is really kind of pushing in me just because of the level of stress that I carry at this job and in my family. And so I try once a month. It happens to be more like once a quarter lately because we have really ailing parents. I find a cabin somewhere in the mountains and I just spend a Friday and Saturday and I just kind of like take off by myself, which is a little intimidating, but I just really spend that time with God. I just rest. And a lot of it looks like swinging in a hammock between two trees. Like I'm pretty lazy in my rest and it's kind of lovely, you know?
Love it. Yeah.
And then we have annual rhythms too, where mountaintop experiences where we just try to get away and, you know, do the grease thing and just enjoy the provisions that God has given to us. So it's pretty cool.
It's like when people ask you how it was, you're like, I don't really have anything to say. It was amazing.
It was just amazing.
There's nothing
I just chilled out.
Yes.
Nothing I produced.
Yeah. I don't have to like give you a report.
Totally. It's so freeing because you didn't have to produce anything, you know, and I'm in just vulnerability. I'm in a really hard season of life. The church is fantastic, but my mom just passed away and my stepdad, who's been in our lives for a long, long time, he's in the process of passing away and we're the primary caregivers. And so it's a heavy burden. It's been a heavy burden for a long season. And what I'm noticing is my Friday Sabbath is kind of disappearing because I spend Friday taking care of things that need to be taken care of, you know, in the person's end of life stage. And so I'm recognizing in myself that I'm quicker to anger. I'm a little bit like snarky. My sarcasm's getting a little bit more bitey. You know, I'm not as patient. Like all those fruits that come from resting in God, they're kind of like slowly atrophying a little bit. Like I look more like a raisin than a grape right now. That's what I feel like, you know. And so I actually was sitting at one of our board of trustee meetings, and this incredibly wise woman on our trustee board was just kind of reflecting with me and how difficult our season of life is and how I'm almost like angry and jealous that I'm having to give up something that is so important to me. And she said something so simple and so profound. She said, okay, well, that's the season that you're in. God's keeping you in that season. So she said, what does it look like to find God in the moment rather than in the Sabbath week, right? She said, what does it look like to just take 5 minutes. When you feel yourself spin, walk around the church. Just breathe, be present with God. Take a little bit of that Friday Sabbath and impart it in your 5 minutes that you have every day. It's been amazing.
That's beautiful.
It's been amazing.
Wow.
Not the same. Like, I really still miss my Sabbath and I'm working back towards it. But that little burst of, it's like taking a 5-hour energy drink, you know?
Yes.
It's like this little burst of like, God's just there with me and he's like filling me.
Yeah.
And then I come back, I'm not yelling at people.
that's
I just
beautiful.
take a chill for a second.
What was the thing we practiced a couple months ago? Like we'd say a scripture.
Oh, the Lectio Divina?
Yes.
Oh, the breath prayers. Breath prayers. Love them.
That's what made me think of. Didn't you have a really good one that you were using for a while? Do you still use that?
Yes, breath prayers are so amazing. So they're so simple, you guys. It's literally like you find yourself in a situation, any situation, good, bad, angry, whatever, and you know you shouldn't be in it alone, and so you just invite God into it. And so you just take a breath and you offer an invitation. And so some of the invitations can be like, God, please be here doing this or something. Mine is really simple. God, help me see you in this space. God, help me see you in this space. Some of those spaces are really hard. Some spaces are just like there's, maybe you're in a board meeting and there's people fighting, or you have 2 teenagers who are fighting over the keys for a car, whatever it is. Like whatever stress you're dealing with, just take a deep breath in and just invite God into that space. God, please help me know you're here with me in this space. Even just that simply is so beautiful.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's really cool.
Yeah. I love that analogy of like the bite size because you can't live on it, but you can't live without it either, though. Like he's with you through the hard times. It's not like he's only with you on the Sabbath. And I think we can get stuck in that because it feels so good when you do start doing like the weekly Sabbaths. But the daily is beautiful too. And he's with you through it all.
Because he's there. He's the reality is God says he is there with us. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us. He's constantly with us. And I think sometimes, because we can't be that way.
No.
So it's like we forget that, or we just, I don't know, are not trusting in how big he is. But he's there. So it's like just even acknowledging he's there and just being like, please, Lord, let me feel you in this space. It's powerful.
And I love that you said that we're only in one space at one time. And just to know that he's bigger than us and we're feeling stressed because we can't do it all on our own.
Exactly.
We're not God. So
no, exactly.
That's beautiful.
I think there's one fun thing that we didn't share that I really want us to share. We had this insight from this Bema podcast. It's spelled BEMA, just in case you want to look for it. It's kind of a cool thing.
We can link it down too.
We can just say, I told you, she's amazing at all these things. So she'll link it. She's awesome. So you share about it, the nighttime.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. So what's really beautiful is that in Hebrew culture, they would start their Sabbath actually at night, starting it resting. So going to bed. And that kind of just revolutionized like how I view Sabbath. And so then they would start on Friday night and then go into Saturday and spend 24 hours resting, eating, laughing, praying, reading scripture. And so that was, it just kind of like mind shifted for me because I think it's so easy to wake up and then just instantly feel all the stress of the day or the stress of trying to Sabbath. Like there's just so much for our overproducers. So that was a really cool thing that I've tried to implement too, of like, okay, let's say at like 5 or 6, we're done. We're done working. We're done responding to texts or whatever it is that is stressful. And now we're going to start to notice God, and I'm going to go to sleep knowing that I'm a child of God and that he's made me exactly how I am. And I, like really just going back to how he created us from the dust. And that's
so beautiful.
It's beautiful.
I wish that we had learned this like so long ago.
Me too.
I love it. But I'm so grateful for God's timing in it, because like I've had to give up I've given up my Friday, but even just starting on Thursday night and really practicing that, then I get Thursday night through Friday morning, which is Sabbath. And that's enough to sustain me for right now. It's just a slight little change that really, like you said, it's revolutionary. It's like, why? This is amazing.
I know. It's so cool.
It is so cool.
And I forgot. Do you remember where it was in the scriptures that they kind of pulled that out of? I don't remember.
I think, oh shoot, we'll have to link that because it's in one of I think it's the second episode. Okay. So it must be like shortly after the fall, the Cain and Abel space. I think that was the episode it was in. Okay. But anyways.
That's so good. So
he
good.
he like links straight to the scripture, so you can see where God is actually speaking that and like encouraging that.
Yeah.
It's been really cool.
It's beautiful.
Well, this has been fun.
Yeah, it's been so fun. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And maybe you can kind of implement some of these things slowly. And of course, if you have any questions or want to like start conversation about this stuff, especially if you start listening to Bayma, we'd love to talk about that.
Seriously.
But we also have an engagement team here. And basically, they're here to like help you walk along your spiritual journey. And we'll have a link. They kind of walk you through like where you're at and where you'd like to be going. And really just another community to walk you through some of the stuff we're talking about too. So we'll link it down below.
That's so good. They are a really fun team.
Yeah.
We hope this is something that you've at least sparked an interest, you know, and I think most of us are just along for the journey together and like learning from each other and like bouncing ideas off of each other and like trying different things. We're here with you. So if you're interested, just connect with us. Also, we would love to see you on Sunday. So if you haven't been here yet, if you haven't come into the building yet, we invite you here. We'd love to see you. We have services at 8:30, 10 o'clock, and 11:30. You can also catch us live at any one of those times as well. Either way, we'd love to connect you to community here at Crossroads, and we're really glad you joined us today on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I think that's it, right?
That's it.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Collision. This podcast is a production of Crossroads Church in Thornton, Colorado. For more excellent content, please visit crossroadsabc.com.